Today we're going to learn how to switch chords quickly on guitar. I know for a lot of beginners that this is something that seems really hard to get the hang of. Luckily today I'm going to show you guys a few tricks that you can use to switch chords a little quicker. For this video I'm going to be using what I believe to be the most common chord progression. It is G, D, E minor, and C. It's used in a bunch of different styles of music. Most pop songs you hear probably are going to use that. So once you master this progression, you could play literally thousands of songs. Anyway, here's the 4 tips that I'm going to give you that'll help you switch chords faster. Tip number 1, leave down any fingers you can when switching chords. For example, when switching from an E minor to a C chord, you can leave the middle finger down. So I'm doing the E minor with first and second fingers. And then we're going to do that. So we'll leave the middle finger down. Here we go. So that does make it a lot easier. It gives you a finger to pivot on, and you don't have to let go of everything. Whenever you can leave something down, it's a good idea. You don't want to let go of everything every time. Some people will take the fingers, the whole hand off or whatever. No, stay as close as you can to the fretboard and to the chord that's coming next. Tip number 2, you can let go of the chord on the final strum before you switch to the next chord. This is only necessary if the chords have no fingers in common, or they don't have any frets in common. So let's try switching this on from a D to an E minor chord. I'll do a few strums first, and then we'll let go. So you want to just think about where you're going, go straight to the next chord. And you'll see too that my first and second fingers here are going to both go from these fret 2s to these fret 2s. So it's just right over. So the switch, nobody's really going to notice, especially if the song is faster. So let's check it out. It's so quick that I don't think anybody will really notice. So that's a good tip for switching, especially if they have nothing in common. Tip number 3, for hard switches, try just switching back and forth and drilling the 2 chords. The previous tips can be used for this as well. So let's try this going from a C chord to a G chord. They don't have any fingerings in common, so a matter of going back and forth a lot. You want to visualize where each finger is going to go. Visualize and then attack. Happy Gilmore reference. I'm probably making this look easy, but just go back and forth. Yeah, that's going to work for some tough ones. This might take the longest to get used to. But we must push on and keep trying to do it. And tip number 4. In some cases, you can slide a finger up or down as another way to pivot to get to the next chord. For example, when switching from a D chord to an A chord, we can slide the 3rd finger down, and then it'll be in place for the next chord. So like this. I'm actually not lifting this finger off, I'm just sliding it back. So let's try the chord progression that I mentioned earlier. Those are your 4 tips. We're going to put them to work in that 4 chord progression. And I'll tell you which tips you can use for each of the switches. Okay, first switch is G to D. We can leave the 3rd finger down when switching G to D. So we'll pivot on that D note. So try to leave that down. We're doing the 4-finger G. I know some people do the G, 3 fingers like that. But for this, we're going to use the 4-finger G. So that's that switch. Next is D to E minor. These chords don't have any fingerings in common, but I did show you earlier that these 2 fingers are going to go over a few strings and they're going to stay on the same frets. If it helps too, you can try to leave your third finger down as you switch these other fingers and then let go of it. And if all else fails, use tip 2 and just let go of the whole thing as you get to the next one, especially on the final strum. And on this, the final strum is leading basically to the next chord anyway. Those open strings are part of the chord, so you could even just play those strings only if you have that kind of discipline. Okay, the next switch is going to be E minor to C. For this switch, you can leave the second finger down like I showed you earlier. Alright, simple enough. And the last switch is C to G. The switch also has no fingers in common. We showed it before. This would be a good one to drill back and forth, as we did before. So the more you do that, the quicker you'll get. It's kind of just building up your muscle memory. Make each finger go straight to the next note instead of going like this and then. A lot of people try to do one finger at a time, but the more you do it, you'll be able to go more than one finger at a time. You should be able to get to them all switching at the same time. And don't remove the whole hand from the guitar. So that's the full progression. We're back to the beginning now. So let me show you the whole thing with some strumming. So if we incorporate all those different ways of switching, it becomes a lot less of a daunting task to play this whole chord progression. I'd suggest playing this a few times through, see which switches are the hardest for you, and drill those back and forth for a while. It's always best to tackle the hardest tasks first. Once you go through them, try the full progression again and just repeat the process. By the way, if these chords are hard for you, feel free to capo the guitar up a few frets, and it should be easier to push the strings down, and also the frets are going to be smaller the further up you go, so easier to reach, easier to push down, should help. So once you master this progression, you'll be able to play so many songs, thousands. It's especially used in pop, country, rock, not really jazz, but pretty much anything other than jazz. Hopefully these have been some helpful tips. Best of luck to you guys, and let me know what you want me to go over next.